everybody. I wanted to take a couple of minutes to give you some general feedback on the first evidence analysis library assignment. This was on the article that reviewed some previously published research about self-weighing and its effect on weight management, as well as its effect on psychological outcomes. This was by Zing and colleagues, and I am going to go through the worksheet that you've turned in just to give some general feedback. And if you haven't taken a look at your feedback on your PDF submission from this first EAL assignment, make sure you go and do that, because I give you some specific feedback on your work as well. But I just wanted to address some of the things that I saw more frequently when grading the class as a whole, so that we can avoid these these pieces of confusion and issues in the future. Because, like we said, these assignments are going to build on each other, and at the end of the semester, you're going to have to read an article and complete an entire EAL worksheet on it. So this is just a piece of that. Okay, so the article, or the first question was for you to cite the article in AMA format. So that's what you see here. Something I want to note is that the only, you have your authors with their first and last initial only separated by a comma. This ends with a period. Then you have your article title, which was Self-Weighing and Weight Management, a Systematic Literature Review. I want to call attention to the fact that only the S in self is capitalized. So remember, in AMA format, we only capitalize the first letter of the first word of the article title. The next is the journal title, so the actual journal publication, which is the obesity journal. This is italicized, and this is the only thing that is italicized. So something that I saw frequently was that this, some of you put that this was the article, that this was the journal title, Clinical Trials, Behavior, Pharmacotherapy, Devices, and Surgery. The actual journal is obesity, which you see up in this right-hand corner. But also, if you go down to here, this gives you almost the entire citation, and obesity is italicized here. That is a really good indication that that is your journal title. If you ever are confused about this on a future assignment, you can ask me just to double check. What this is, wording up here is the section of that journal publication. So if you take a look at the Academy's journals, they send those out, I think, either monthly or quarterly. Each of the actual published physical journal that they send out has different sections. So the obesity journal likely has the same or similar sections that they publish every single time they publish their whole journal that they send out. And one of those sections is likely Clinical Trials, Behavior, Pharmacotherapy, Devices, and Surgery. So this means that every publication, they're going to highlight some type of review or study that discusses behavior or pharmacotherapy, devices, or surgery related to obesity or weight management. So I know why this would be confusing, but obesity is actually our journal title. Okay, so moving on, describe the study design. So what I've written here is that Zing and colleagues collected data from previously published research on a specific topic to analyze the data as a whole. This makes Zing and colleagues study a systematic review of literature. So, how do we know that they analyze lots of different studies? If you go down to their methods, the first thing that should tip you off is that they're doing literature searches, okay? So these are all databases where they can look up previously published research, and they did that by using these specific keywords. So this should send off a red flag to you that they are collecting previously published research rather than doing their own experiment. Okay. Then you see on data extraction, they're talking about the articles that they've used. So they, in their final study count, they had 17 studies that they reviewed. Okay, so that should signal you there again that this is a review. Okay, it is also in the title, a systematic literature review. Okay, so describe the research purpose. I have that the purpose of this systematic review was to collect, this should say, to collect previously published research on the topic of self-weighing and outcomes of weight management and psychological outcomes. Simply put, these authors wanted to determine the effects of self-weighing on weight management and also if self-weighing had any psychological repercussions. So where did I find that? I think I've actually highlighted that. This is in just the introduction section, and that's typically where the purpose is going to be included at the very end of the introduction before they discuss their methods. So the author should explicitly state why the study was done. If they don't do that, then that is an indication that the authors didn't know what they were doing for their study, and that means that that study may have had a lot of bias introduced to it, or it wasn't well designed from the beginning. So you see here it says the aim of this article is to review the empirical literature on the role of self-weighing and weight management among overweight, obese adults enrolled in longitudinal prospective studies specifically focused on the association between self-weighing and weight change and the association between self-weighing and psychological outcomes. So I did see several people almost copy and paste this section, and that is a big, big no-no. So in the future, you have got to put this in your own words and explain this like you were talking to me. One, that tells me that you really understand what these big words mean, but two, you aren't plagiarizing. So if we copy and paste or if we use the words that are published in literature, that means that's plagiarism. So in the future, do not do that. Okay, there were no funding sources identified. Some of y'all went above and beyond and tried to look up those authors and look up the publication in other areas to see if there was any funding. So I appreciated that, but no funding identified for number 4. And then finally, I have for you to use your own words to summarize the article and then to provide reviewer comments. So your article summary should always explain what happened. So who, what, when, where, why, and how. You also have to include the results in the conclusions of that study, because if you summarize it without the results in the conclusion, the reader is going to be like, okay, well, what was this? What was the purpose of this? What do we find out? Leaving me on a cliffhanger. So you always have to include those results. In this case, they had some evidence that there was an association between self-weighing and improved weight loss, improved weight prevention. So we saw some good in self-monitoring of weight. And then there were a few studies that evaluated psychological outcomes. To me, these weren't well defined, and they kind of exclude the reality that some people may not be fit for self-monitoring of weight, especially people who have history of disordered eating or an actual diagnosed eating disorder. So the idea about maybe they didn't define those psychological outcomes that great, or think about maybe the populations who this wouldn't benefit, would go in those reviewer comments. So the last thing I want to mention about reviewer comments is that I don't want you to tell me, yeah, this is a good study because the results are exciting. What I want you to do is be more critical in looking at the type of study and the study design and the conclusions that they've made. So something that we talked about previously is that correlation does not equal causation. So some studies, if they are designed to be just observations, we can maybe draw some associations from those, but we can't draw cause and effect relationships. So we have to be careful whenever we say that self-weighing causes better weight loss, when in reality it may be associated with greater weight loss or improved weight management. So those are some things to think about. If you have any questions specifically about the feedback that I gave you, please reach out to me in email and be on the lookout for some direction for EAL assignment number 2.